All right, so welcome, folks. This is the re-recording for the Toon Boom 2 lecture, which will be working on combined with Toon Boom 3 for our PacMan project that we're going to be starting our Toon Boom unit off with. So we're looking at today moving on from just the basics of working with just drawing layers, just basic drawing layers. Now we're going to be working with what we would call peg layers. And that'll be coming in with what we do on the next assignment with Toon Boom 3, actually. But we're just starting to discuss the concepts of different types of layers in this assignment. So we have our pegs that control our drawings. Now this is similar to what you might remember from in Maya, where we had our character rigs, which were geometry, the type of modeling stuff that we did before, but then also the little rings around it and stuff were the controls for that geometry. So in the same way, you have drawing layers, like we worked with on our first assignment, our name writing assignment. Then you have these peg layers. So, and you can see they have different icons on the name. So, name the 4 buttons across the layers tab. You can see there's an add layer for the plus. That'll give you a variety of different layer types. We'll only use a few, and we'll cover those throughout what we learn about Toon Boom. Remove layers, the minus obviously, and then there's a direct add layer, drawing layer, and add peg button, because those are the 2 most frequent ones that you'll be adding while you're working in Toon Boom. So, describe the relationship between a peg and a drawing layer. So we'll be working on this more on Thursday, but pegs should always be in control of the drawings. So you can see here, there's sort of an indent here where the drawing layer is basically the child of this parent that is the peg layer here. So clicking the add peg button with a drawing layer selected will automatically put that drawing layer within the peg that it adds. So it'll add a peg that controls the drawing layer you have selected. So that's very helpful. And if you have a peg selected, it'll sub-peg that, so to speak. It'll put that peg within another peg. So that way you can create a set of hierarchies. Cool. So I'm going to just briefly touch on these 2 things here. So we're familiar with the concept of setting a keyframe. We'll be setting our keyframes on Toon Boom 3. So we'll be, once we have our scenes built. So setting a keyframe, F6, we'll be coming back to this in a little bit, and a motion path, just like we had when we were in Maya. So that was the little path that showed you where your ball bounced and such, so you can add one of those. Again, we'll be revisiting this stuff when we are continuing with the second half of the project. So that brings us to page 2. So for our assignment, do I have the modules page up? I do not, so I'm going to click here. Let's go to Canvas, and I will go here, and you'll notice in our modules page down here that I've given you 3 pictures: a PacMan layout, and then a vulnerable ghost and a ghost. Okay, so for starters, you just need to get the PacMan layout. So that will be what we start with. I'm going to pull up Harmony. So this is going to be my PacMan maze, I guess we'll call it. All the default settings are fine. Create a scene. So now it's brought me in here. There's an empty drawing layer, all my usual stuff. The first thing that I want to do is bring in the picture I have of the maze. So before we get into that, though, let's talk about the maze that we are bringing in is a picture from Google. So pictures that we find from Google are typically going to be in the JPEG or PNG file formats, which means that they are bitmap images, meaning they're made with pixels. So if they're made with pixels, there's a finite amount of pixels in their scenes. So this is Pinky rather, sorry, I think. I'm not sure. It's like pink red. So, but it is 920 or 820 by 820 pixels. You can see in the bottom of the screen. So that'll tell you that there is a finite amount of pixels in here. It's 820 by 820, but what the picture is defining is what is the color on each one of those individual pictures within this file. So bitmap images are finite because they are a set number of pixels, and the picture defines what color each pixel is within that finite space. Now, we also can look at this text here and note that no matter how far I zoom in on this text, it's pretty dang crisp. Now you can see there's a little bit of fading here. That's called anti-aliasing. But we can scale this text near infinitely. This is 760 point font. And that's because the text is made out of vector shapes. And so what is vector? Vector is just like what we were creating with our pen tool paths. It's shapes, curves, lines, and text that are infinitely scalable because they're essentially at their base equations for some defined shape. And you're just scaling the size of those variables, so to speak. So we've already discussed the idea of the stroke a little bit on the first assignment, just talking about how the pencil and the brush differ and how they work. So for our vector tools in Toon Boom, our pencil tool, the vector stroke that we're creating is on the inside of the line, and so that's how we're able to scale the thickness after the fact. The same with our shape tools, which we will be seeing in a second. And then also brushes, the vector strokes are on the outside of the shape. So a stroke is simply the vector path in Toon Boom. It's just where's the actual line. We can turn these on and off with K. We're going to come back to this in a second because I'll show you how close gap works. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of the assignment. So we're in here. We're going to start by downloading those 3 files from the modules, and then I'll go ahead and import and start with my layout and bring that in. I do not need to vectorize this image, although it gives you the option if you would like. It tries to create an equivalent vector shape. It's not amazing. It's okay. It's pretty good. So with simple stuff, it works okay. And so you can see here now we got our picture of the PacMan maze on its own layer, and you can see it's extended for 60 frames. So cool. This drawing layer we have here, I'm just going to go ahead and rename this, and I'll name this maze. So this is where I'm going to draw my maze. All right. So I'm on frame 1. I'm going to go ahead and add a new color, and this color is going to be maze outline. And instead of it being black, I'm gonna make it like cyan actually. Let's do like that. Okay. Cool. So I'm gonna actually start with a rectangle. All right, and I'm gonna zoom in, so that'll be, whoops. That'll be 2. And then space bar will come up here. So I'm going to start by getting myself on the outline of this shape here. I'm defining the outline of my maze. And I'm going to increase the thickness of this line to fill in this wall here. So I'm not worried about that. So now that I got this shape made, let me double check that it matches up by selecting it and moving these things around a little bit. This is slightly off by like a pixel or 2. All right. So now that I got that one done, I'm just going to go ahead and select that and copy and paste. And so now that I have it selected, I just want to try and match it up as best I can with this thing vertically. How do we do? And I can always use the arrow keys while I have it selected to move it over. I think that looks right. Okay. And then now I'm just going to hold shift and move it down to the bottom now. Let's see, that looks right. This is a little longer than the top one, so I will have to move this up. That's not a problem. All right. Then I'll take this. Oh, whoops, you know what? I'm being silly. I want to copy this and paste it. And then, same concept, so I'll bring it over here. I think it's off by a little bit, so let me zoom in. There we go. So we'll do that, and then I'm just going to shorten this to the size of the warps. Okay, so that's fine. And then now I am going to just take, you know what? I did this in a dumb way yesterday. I'm going to take the line tool and I'm just going to hold shift and draw a straight line down here. Let me zoom in there. That looks about right. Take this, copy, paste. And we'll just move that right over here. Looks good to me. All right. So, talking about strokes. So, if I press K, what's great is you'll be able to see the little black or the little colored in dots where my strokes are overlapping with each other. So what that's going to allow me to do is create a contiguous shape out of all of these once I've shaved off the extra stuff. So let me start with my eraser. Make my eraser quite large. I'm going to leave the strokes visible for you folks, but you don't need to have the strokes visible. Whoops. As long as you know what's going on. So I'm just doing this to show you what is happening behind the scenes. Again, showing strokes is with the K key. All right, so now I got those shaved down quite a bit. Let me make these nice and small. And fix this up. And then we'll shave this. All right, let's see. And then, whoops, I almost erased the wrong spot. Cool. So almost done here. I just gotta get this done and this done. All right. Oh, ha ha ha. Careful. Okay. There we go. So now we got, I'm gonna press K to turn this off now. So now we got this whole shape here. So if I select this, in fact, let me make sure I select all of it. I can increase the size of these by going under my pencil size here and increasing the thickness of these things. Now I don't want to go too far. And you'll notice you'll get some of these breaks here at these corners. If that bothers you, you can go fix those with like the brush tool or the pencil or what have you. So you're next gonna go through and start making these interior portions of the maze. So maze outline, let me go ahead and drop this in. I wonder if holding Alt and moving it Oh, holding Alt and moving it duplicates it. That is so raw. Okay. So I'm going to hold Alt and Shift, drag this box over to here. So that's going to duplicate it and move it in a straight line. Select this, Shift and Alt. Drag and copy it over here. Great. I'm going to select these. And I'm going to make their thickness a little bit more. Don't need to go wild. And then I'm going to fill these. Let's make a new color. Maze fill. And let's make this aesthetic. There we go. And then, so you'll just continue to go through this and fill in the rest of this stuff. So, once you complete your whole maze, you don't need to create any of the pellets. You don't need to worry about that. You will need to then, once you have your maze done, we're going to make a new drawing layer. And this will be our PacMan. Or Ms. PacMan, depending on how you want to do it. And we will just make a simple ellipse. And now, before I do that, I need to make sure again that I'm making colors for this. So this will be my PacMan. Make this yellow. Okay. Cool. And I'm going to make a circle. Great. I'm going to make a black circle in this circle, and I'm going to fill it black, so that's my eyeball. And then I will, to save myself a step, I'm going to grab this and copy it and paste it here, go back to this frame, and I'm just going to paint yellow in this so that it's solid. Now I'll come back to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the open mouth shape into this. So I have my yellow for my PacMan. Let me zoom in here and try and go through the center of this thing. We'll call that good. And so let me just get my eraser. And so I'm going to double check here. I might have, see, I severed my strokes here. So check it out. So there's these two dots are not connected anymore because I erased this too far. So if I try and fill this whole shape in, it's going to fill the whole circle. See, it's going to fill all the way in here too because I cut these holes. So when that happens, that's when you will need to use this close gap tool. So this is why you want to know how the strokes work and when to turn them on. Because if it's not painting the way you expect it to paint, that means you probably have a hole between some of your strokes. And you can use this close gap tool, which is under the paint tool, and that will draw a stroke with no color that goes to fill that gap. So let me Harmony. Grab the close gap tool underneath here, and I'm just going to draw a quick line there. There we go. So that's all sewed up now. You can see all the little blue dots. Zoom out and press K. Go back to paint. There we go. Cool. So then I just need to fix this. Okay, cool. Now we have a PacMan open and closed. We'll be using this for our animation purposes next week, or next assignment in 2 days. Okay, So we have a maze built, which again, yours should be complete. Mine is incomplete for brevity. So fill out the rest of your maze. Then, when you have that done, you actually don't need this PacMan layer. You can either like turn it off or remove it if you don't want it there. And then, let's see, you will need to then finally at the end bring in what you need for the next portion, which are the 2 ghost images. So import your ghosties. So you want the ghost PNG as well as import images. You want to bring in the vulnerable ghost. And we're going to be using all of these for our animation purposes when we talk about that on Thursday. So that is the first portion of this assignment. You're going to make your maze. Here, let me give you the final countdown. So complete your maze entirely. Make the PacMan or Ms. PacMan, make both states open and closed mouth. And then bring in the ghost and the vulnerable ghost. So you'll need both states of the ghost for your animation portion. When you have all of those, you are set, and you're not turning in this until you're done with the part 2 of this. So sit tight. All right, thank you for watching.